Hello YouTube. Today I have a iPhone 11 charging port replacement. This device came to me for no power. It wasn't turning on. I've already done some diagnostic work, which is why the screen is off, the battery is out, there's no gasket. And I've determined, the astute viewer would notice that the water damage indicators are red. So at some point, water got in or around certain components on the device. I can tell that the device has the ability to charge, which is a good thing, because sometimes if the device has board level issues, then it will, like, let's just say it'll turn on with a charged battery, but it doesn't have the ability to charge with its own components. I've seen that before. Now, at least what I've been able to determine is it charges through the wireless charger, and it can charge up or at least a new battery. The old battery or the original battery is toast, but it does charge a new battery, which is good news. So which leads me to believe that I in theory should be able to just replace the charging port, and I figured this would be a great time to make a video, as I have not made a video about it. Also in the process, I'm going to show you how to remove a stripped, I can assume that some water got in around the charging port because one of the pentalobes is corroded, basically stuck there, and hindsight 2020, I wish I would have made a video showing how to remove the screen, but I will, if I remember, I'll make a video and upload that later. But essentially you sort of just have to use a opening tool, heat up the perimeter, and literally wedge a opening tool, use it like you normally would, and sort of just push up, and essentially what it does is it sort of just bends back this particular pin in the screen. If you do it right, the screen, at least I did it right, the screen is still functional, so that's good news. I just need to essentially just pop this thing back in right here, but whatever, I'll do that later. Now, a couple of the tools that we're going to need for this particular repair are you already see one in use, a magnetic mat to keep track of our mini screws. This is a board out repair. Pretty much every charging port replacement is now. What else? We have, I use two different tweezers. Actually, wait, for this one, we don't need two different tweezers. That was for me to remove the battery, but most of you won't need to remove the battery. I use a couple of different drivers. We need a pentalobe, we need a Phillips, a Y000. I get mine from iFixit. They have an amazing bit. Essentially, I stopped stripping tri-wings pretty much the moment I got it, and I haven't gone back. And then iPhone has a standoff bit for a couple of these screws, like here, here, here. And then we're also going to need a heat source to heat up the charging port. Also, you're going to need a heat source to warm up the perimeter gasket. That way you can, ideally, I assume that most people most of you are going to need to reuse the screen, and the XR and the 11s have, let's just say, if you use too much force, they have a tendency to crack the glass, removing it. So heating up the perimeter gasket definitely helps out a lot, lowers the chance of you cracking the display or cracking the glass or display in the process. So please use that. And then as far as some consumables, we're going to use, I'm going to put a new, I'm going to put a new gasket back on, and I'm trying to think, that's about it. If you feel that I left anything out, by all means, make sure to leave a comment down below. If you liked the video, leave a comment down below. Let me know, I don't know, how your repair went. Also give the video a like, really helps out. And with that, let's get started. So as you can see from the intro, I've already removed the screen. As you can clearly see, I've already removed the battery. and the retaining plates. I will mention this ahead of time, or not ahead of time, I'll mention it right now. You do want, so the first, before you go removing the screen, the first and last thing that we always connect, I'll mention this before I connect my screen and anything else, but you always want to make sure the battery is disconnected. The likelihood of something wrong happening is usually when you're connecting stuff, just because the phone is off, there's still electricity running through the board. So on the off chance that this happens a lot on the 6S, I've seen it happen on the 7s, and pretty much but you can blow especially on LCD models, you can blow the backlight, or you can just short out part of the board. It's no good. You want all power removed. Make sure that your battery is disconnected. It doesn't have to be removed, just make sure it's disconnected before you start connecting or disconnecting anything on the device. So obviously here I've already removed some of these, so we can start with the board removal. Oh, yeah, I knew I was forgetting something. Nylon spudger. So, use the flat end of your spudger. And you can sort of, you can see that there is a little shelf sort of right in front of the connector. Pretty much all connectors work this way. Now, depending on how quickly you're going to be doing this repair, it's not a bad idea to put your either Face ID camera or even your rear camera in a bag, just so that dust and or debris don't get on the lenses. You can remove, or you can replace the camera in the 11 series, but just like with most models, or pretty much not most, all models, you can't replace the Face ID component. So if, let's just say, you get dust or debris or something on that, and, well, you're pretty much screwed. So I generally like to tuck those away for safekeeping. We have our standoffs. Remove your SIM. And sort of push this pin back in, and we can come lift up. And then we have several more. Not sure why, but they decided to make this slightly more complicated than even the 11 Pro or 11 Pro Max. So now we have our 3 flex cables up top. You can sort of just fold them. This one's easier because you have a longer flex, and these two kind of aren't. I use the pointed end of my spudger right here. And then once you're here, I sort of use this bracket and just, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And this little dude right there. And for whatever reason, they felt it necessary to, you can see that there is a little loop right there. And here, and these sort of fit together. They are sort of a pain in the neck to reinstall, but we'll worry about that later. Now comes removing all the charging port screws. Through the magic of editing, I'm going to do this in the blink of an eye. So once you remove all the screws, this plate lifts up and away. We're then left with disconnecting the Taptic Engine, and then we have a couple more screws for the speaker. There is a little gasket, sort of foam gasket on the speaker. Just sort of pull on it and it'll come loose. And this is pretty much it. Oh, I may or may not have mentioned this, but I stripped. This one is corroded right here, so essentially what I'm going to do is, normally I would obviously have this this pentalobe screw removed, but I can't because it literally stripped one of my bits in the process of doing it, just ruined one of my drivers. But I'm going to remove the flex, and then I just have to take a set of needle nose pliers and slowly, quarter turn at a time, twist until I can get this thing out, and then I'm going to obviously replace it. So there's a couple of ways to remove the charging flex. The first is sort of just pull up. There is some adhesive. You can see there's some literally right here, and I was able to do that cold. There's also some right here. There's some on the microphones, so 1 and 2, and kind of just all along the bottom. Usually, I don't need to because I don't think that I'm going to be reusing or using this charging flex afterwards. But as a general rule, I try to be as minimally invasive as possible. So I use my heat gun. Remove that flex. Not sure how, but I completely forgot about these 2 screws. don't do that. All right. And we can come back. Use the flat end of your spudger. You can sort of and then it just comes out just like that. Now, I need to contend with that screw. So after a while, then you get to the point where you have enough to grab onto. You don't want to do it before then, and then you can just grab really hard, use a little force. And that was wildly unnecessary. I mean, necessary in the sense that I had to get out, but good Lord. There we go. That's our screw. So now begins the journey of reinstalling everything. Now, it is very important. I'll point out a couple of things. Before, you always want to make sure that you get these little tabs on the microphones. Some of the charging ports that you have them, some don't, but you always want to check to make sure that they're there, or else you're going to basically get all the way through this repair and then find that your microphones don't work, and then you need to take the phone apart. After that, make sure that the adhesive that was on your microphones isn't like folded over, or you want to make sure that it's not obstructing your microphones, or once again, you're going to have to take the thing apart. That's not fun. Let's not do that. This is usually a lot easier if everything is sort of with the OEM cables, because everything is sort of tucked and folded in just the right way, and when you're installing a new cable, it's basically not tucked and folded in just the right way. So you sort of have to mess around. Other times you just need to give it a head start. Once that's there, you can sort of do the same thing on the other side. Drop your microphone in. Let's see if I can get this with, and I don't think I can. Now it's usually at this point that there we go. Make sure that it's not sitting at an awkward angle and that you can get a charging cord before I move on with the rest of the repair. Once again, we want to do as little backtracking as possible. Speak of the devil. Make things in layers. It's kind of annoying. Now we need to fold this bit right here. Doesn't have to be exact. And more than likely it's not going to want to fit in there properly, but we can sort of, actually wait, no. I always forget this screw. That bottom screw isn't a part of this. So there, it'll sort of keep it in place for the time being. Now we come back with our speaker. Next, our Taptic Engine. Before tightening it all the way, you do want to make sure this post, or that hole lines up with that post. What else you're going to do, you're going to have to loosen your screw and then try again. If you misplace this, it's not the end of the world. Now have this piece. The nice thing about the XR and the 11 is that pretty much all of these screws are Phillips, and there's very little tri-wing. In the X, in the XS, in the XS Max, they keep bouncing back and forth between Phillips and tri-wing, which is just kind of annoying and time consuming because you're constantly putting one down and picking up the other. Now we come with our board. It does help to leave this retaining plate in place. If you can, try to fold back gently these flex cables. And then we also need to get under this majigger. Here, now watch me struggle. Wham bam, just like that. Now before we drop the other one in, we need to reconnect our 3 flexes. Now usually the more difficult one is this little dude. Sometimes you actually need a spacer. There, just like that. Last but not least, drop that. Sometimes it helps to sort of pre-fold flexes. Now before you drop that little dude in place, we need our sim tray. Now the bottom one has this little, you can see it right here. And we come with our sim. It fits in properly. If it doesn't, just loosen these 2 screws, then drop it in, then tighten them. There we go. That's connected. Now we come in with our bracket. last but not least, there we go. Now we can start with our Face ID. Now there is a proper position, and I'll mention this before we reseat our screen, but you do want to make sure that this sort of table sits below where the bezel sits, as if you don't position it properly, you can very easily damage the display. And I know this from personal experience. Basically what happens is your screen sits up on this side, and what I did the first, and unfortunately more than once, is you think, why is it sitting up that way? You push down and then you crack your display. So don't do that. Once again, I'll mention this before. Also, before you reinstall your rear camera, you want to make sure that there's no dust or debris on the lenses, as it will prevent your camera from working, or your pictures will just not look very good. Now, I am going to hold off on gluing down our battery until I'm sure that this charging port worked. Same thing with the gasket. I need to get this little bracket to sit, sort of tuck into the screen, so I'm going to do that really quick. Now, if any of you have watched my other videos, which I'm going to assume that most of you haven't, I always like to test the device before sort of sealing it up, because if something doesn't work, or if it doesn't work properly, there's a bunch of, you have all these in a gasket to get past. So I'm going to fire it up, test out our charging port, and then also all of the components on the charging port, which are really just your lower microphones, charging port, your Taptic Engine, loudspeaker. So we're going to test those. Before sealing the battery and everything else. So some stuff is relatively straightforward to test. Obviously the charging port is pretty straightforward. Plug it in, it works or it doesn't. Now obviously the loudspeaker, at least I could, I don't know if you could, but the device made a sound acknowledging the cord was plugged in, but there we go. That seals the deal. Loudspeaker works. Taptic Engine vibrates. And last but not least, voice memos. Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. So all those work. If for whatever reason it wasn't working properly, or if it sounded muffled, or it didn't sound at all, first things first, I would make sure that there was nothing obstructing the microphone. Like I said, I mentioned this earlier, but obviously want to make sure that there's no, the plastic film was removed off of the microphones. Another one is, especially with guys, or like, I mean, there's a couple of military bases in San Diego where I live, and especially Marines. God bless them; they keep me in business. And they, the phones are always messed up or dirty, and sometimes it's just, or especially guys that are in, like, I don't know, contractors or in construction, their phones are just always chalked with dirt, and sometimes that's literally all it takes is just cleaning out the speaker holes or the grill, the mesh. Sometimes that's as simple as it is. But yeah, with that, I'm going to call this repair a success. I'm going to drop a few more components in here, but you don't need me for that. So with that being said, we're all set. Any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Also, make sure to like the video if you got something out of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.